His arm is still raised, 2,000 years later, and it hasn't moved. Frozen mid-motion, shielding a face that never finished the gesture. Whatever killed him happened with terrifying speed. Nothing worked. Archaeologists call it the pugilistic pose. A body found in this position at Herculaneum didn't die peacefully. Not smoke. Not slow suffocation under falling ash, the way we've been told for 200 years. Something else. A wave of heat so extreme it's been compared, almost like a blast furnace door swinging open for a moment, then shutting again. He wasn't alone. Along the shoreline where he was found, archaeologists uncovered dozens more men and exist. Women, children, sheltering together in stone boat chambers facing the sea. To understand what actually happened to them, you have to go back a few hours, to a morning that felt like any other in the shadow of a mountain nobody thought could kill them. Bakers were pulling loaves from ovens. 81 carbonized loaves were later found still inside one, stamped with the baker's own name. And someone had just prepared a meal of eggs, bread, and fish, later found untouched on a table. Pompeii's held somewhere between 11 and 15,000 people, a working Roman port town of theaters, gymnasiums, and taverns. Sitting beneath a mountain nobody in living memory had seen erupt. Vesuvius hadn't shown major activity for centuries. The Romans didn't even have a word for volcano in the way we mean it. Then the mountain opened. Pliny the Younger, as watching from across the bay, wrote to the historian Tacitus decades later, describing a column of smoke shaped, in his words, like an umbrella pine, rising, then spreading horizontally, blotting out the sun. It's the earliest detailed eyewitness account of a volcanic eruption in Western history, so precise that scientists still use his name for this type of event, a Plinian eruption. For hours, Pompeii wasn't struck by fire. It was struck by sky. Pumice stone raining down, roofs groaning under the weight, ash piling nearly 3 meters deep by nightfall. Many residents had time to flee during this phase. Many did. Here's the first surprise. We still don't know, with certainty, exactly which day this happened. For centuries, textbooks confidently gave the date as the 24th of August. But the surviving manuscripts of Pliny's letter contain conflicting dates, and archaeologists have since found late-season produce, warm clothing, and wine-making residue in the ruins. Evidence pointing toward autumn, not high summer. Many researchers today lean toward October or November. It's a small detail. It says something larger. Even a disaster this famous, this thoroughly excavated, still isn't fully settled. What is settled is what came next. And this is where the investigation gets uncomfortable. When archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli began systematic excavation in the 1860s, his team noticed strange voids in the hardened ash. Hollow spaces shaped, unmistakably, like human bodies. Fiorelli's solution became one of archaeology's most haunting techniques, pouring plaster into the cavities before excavating around them. What emerged weren't skeletons. They were casts of a final instant, a dog twisted against its collar, a family huddled together, an arm raised as if to shield a face from something no one could outrun. For over a century, popular accounts assumed these people suffocated slowly, buried alive and gasping for air. It's a horrifying image, and it shaped how the world understood Pompeii for generations. But volcanologists studying the deposits more closely found something different. The layer that killed most of these people wasn't falling ash at all. It was a pyroclastic surge, a fast-moving cloud of superheated gas and rock that swept down the mountainside at speeds that could exceed 100 kilometers an hour, and with temperatures researchers estimate reached several hundred degrees Celsius. The postures preserved in the casts, muscles contracted, and limbs drawn tightly inward, are consistent, scientists argue, with instantaneous heat shock rather than slow suffocation, which means the myth we told for 200 years was crueler than the truth. Many of these people didn't die gasping for hours. They very likely died in seconds, before their bodies even understood what was happening. That's the man from the opening, the one whose arm never came down. Now go a little further, to the shoreline at Herculaneum, where dozens of people were found together, sheltering in boat chambers facing the sea. In 2020, a team of Italian researchers examining one skull from this group reported something extraordinary. Traces of vitrified material inside it, organic tissue converted to a glass-like substance, the kind of transformation that requires extreme heat followed by almost instant cooling. If the finding holds up, It means this person's brain effectively turned to glass where they sat, faster than the body had time to fall. Other scientists have since debated the interpretation, some questioning whether the material formed exactly this way. It's a reminder that even our most dramatic discoveries about that day are still being tested, argued over, refined. But surge temperatures only tell you how people died. They don't tell you who they were, and that's where Pompeii becomes something closer to a diary than a graveyard. Its walls are covered in graffiti, the ancient equivalent of scribbled notes, political endorsements for local elections, a boast about a gladiator's win record, lovers' names carved beside declarations that have outlasted empires. Pompeii wasn't a peaceful backwater either. 16 years before the eruption, a riot broke out in its amphitheater between locals and visitors from a rival town, violent enough that the Emperor Nero banned gladiator games there for a decade. These weren't marble statues of history. They were people with grudges, elections, jokes, and debts, and the eruption simply froze all of it mid-sentence. For centuries afterward, legend filled in what evidence couldn't yet explain, and some later writers cast the disaster as divine punishment for the city's decadence. Pompeii did have a well-documented brothel, complete with frescoes advertising its services, and that fed a moralizing story that outlived the Romans themselves. It's compelling. It isn't what the archaeological record actually supports. Brothels and taverns and baths existed across the Roman world. Pompeii is simply the one we can still walk through. The myth of a city punished for its sins says more about the people telling the story afterward than about the people who actually lived and died there. And this is where the subject grows larger than one town, one afternoon. Pompeii and its neighbor, Herculaneum, buried under different conditions that preserved even wooden furniture and papyrus scrolls, gave the modern world something almost nothing else could: an entire mid-sized Roman city captured in a single moment, rather than pieced together from ruins accumulated over centuries. What historians know about Roman diet, medicine, slavery, and daily commerce has come more from these ash-sealed streets than from almost any text preserved by choice. The disaster that ended thousands of lives also, unintentionally, preserved the texture of ordinary existence in a way no monument ever could. Roughly a third of Pompeii still lies unexcavated. New tools, CT scanning of the plaster casts, DNA analysis, chemical study of the ash layers. Keep revising what we thought we knew, sometimes overturning assumptions that had stood for a century. The man whose arm never came down is still being studied today, his final second still, in some sense, unresolved. What lingers in the end isn't the volcano. It's the loaf of bread still sitting in the oven, waiting for a baker who never came back for it. And the strange comfort in knowing that for most of the people beneath that ash, the end came before they even had time to be afraid.